Welcome to the Hockey Writers Maple Leafs Lounge, a weekly show from our Toronto Maple Leafs writing crew, bringing you the latest news, rumors, trades, player grades, prospects, and much more. From training camp to the playoffs, from draft day to the trade deadline, our team covers everything that happens with the blue and white. Come on in and pull up a chair. Welcome to the Maple Leafs Lounge.
Hello and welcome to the Maple Leafs Lounge. I am your host, Peter Baracchini, and as always, I'm joined by my colleagues over at the Hockey Writers, fellow Maple Leaf writer Alex Hobson, and honorary Maple Leaf fan or commentator just for the playoffs. We know you see him with the Vancouver Canucks and Prospects Corner. Matthew Zator is with us today. Guys, how are you doing?
Doing good.
It's a Sunday morning and I'm talking about Leafs playoff hockey starting tomorrow. So I'm in a bit of a weird headspace right now, but
yeah, it's going to be an interesting time right now. And as always, regular season is over and the playoffs are literally just around the corner, as most of the games are going to start on the 2nd when this will be up. And we will talk about the Maple Leafs series coming up. But before we get into that, this week's show is brought to you by the Hockey Writer Sports Betting Guide, a brand new source for your daily sports betting odds, lineups, props, futures, as well as some daily fantasy strategies and analysis. Make sure to follow THW Bets on Twitter to get the latest on everything sports betting. Also, if you decide to bet, please do so responsibly. And if you or anyone you know has a problem with gambling, please check out the resources that we have in the description below. As we mentioned at the top of the show, it's playoff time, and we finally know who the Maple Leafs matchup is. It is the Tampa Bay Lightning, the back-to-back Stanley Cup champs. Toronto is the second seed in the Atlantic, Tampa Bay the third. Maple Leafs with the 54-21-7 record with 115 points. Tampa Bay just behind with 51-23-8. And this season series was basically neck and neck, and this is why this is going to be an interesting one. Toronto was 2-2-0. Tampa Bay was 2-1-1, where they suffered an overtime loss at the beginning of the season in November. And just also a little points since the trade deadline. Toronto has had a better record, 15-3-2 compared to the Lightning 12-7-2. Then again, that's the regular season. It doesn't matter because it is a clean slate. I'm just going to start off with your overall opinions on this series. Alex, how do you feel about this matchup? And is this the ideal one, considering that, there was a possibility where the Boston Bruins made it interesting. And even though that if the Maple Leafs lost that series, it probably could have been the Boston Bruins. Is this the ideal matchup?
well, I've said it before and I'm going to say it again. I don't think that there really is an ideal matchup for the Leafs in the playoffs, because I think the last couple of years have proven that the dragon that they need to slay is themselves. Mm-hmm. I think that we've seen this team play well enough this year, especially against teams like Tampa Bay and Boston, where I'm not really worried about their chances of beating either of those teams. I think all I'm worried about is that the team shows up and doesn't take their foot off the gas. And obviously, if they play the way that they've been playing all season, then we won't have to worry about them playing down to their opponents, because Tampa Bay is right there, which means that they'll hopefully be in it every single game. But yeah, I think you're looking at a couple of teams who are both explosive on offense. I think the Leafs defensive core is maybe still a little step behind Tampa Bay's, but they've definitely improved to the point where they can hang with Tampa Bay's defense. And while Andrei Vasilevskiy obviously has the track record of 2 Stanley Cup wins to back his game up, I think Jack Campbell has something in common with him in the sense that if he gets hot, he can go on a nice run. So I think it's definitely going to be an exciting series. I think for the Leafs, it's going to be important for them to capture momentum early on instead of having to claw their way back. And then obviously keeping that momentum going once they're in a position where they can maybe relax a little bit. But yeah, you don't want to see them in a position again where they're almost there and they think, okay, well, you know what, it's okay. We can take a step back here and let Tampa Bay get back into the series. So overall, Tampa Bay is obviously going to be a super exhausting opponent to face, but I think it's going to be a great series. And I honestly think it's a shame that one of these two teams is going to be eliminated in the first round, because this is the kind of matchup you want to see in the conference finals.
or even a semifinal matchup too.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, I'm going to be an advocate for this, and I'm pretty sure everyone agrees. Go back to the 1-8 format. Simple as that. I mean, this is just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
If I was commissioner for one day, that'll be my one rule, and no one can change that rule. You talked about how there is no ideal matchup, and you talked about how the Maple Leafs would probably prefer to be in an underdog role. There were times where they were viewed as the favorites. Maybe they are right now because of where they are in the standings, but maybe not so much because they are going up against the last two Stanley Cup champions. Matt, the Maple Leafs, is this team poised to possibly go on a deep run? And I know you're a Vancouver Canucks fan. I know, your opinion is going to be completely unbiased here on the Maple Leafs Lounge, but given the success that they've had against some of the top teams, I mean, they went to overtime. They were 1-0-2 against the Florida Panthers, winning on home ice, and twice to overtime on their home ice. They were 2-0 against Tampa, and they swept the Boston Bruins. Is this team for real from an outside perspective?
Well, I mean, I still have concerns over their defense. I've had concerns of their defense for years and years, just like the Oilers, and they never seem to address it in the way that I think they should. But I mean, they did take a step. I mean, getting Giordano was huge, in my opinion. He's a veteran presence that he just doesn't seem to age. He just seems to play a lot of minutes all the time. And I've had experience with the Canucks playing him for, again, years and years. So, I mean, I'm pretty familiar with how he plays. So he's a huge addition to that blue line. And I mean, he may be the difference. I'm not sure if Muzzin will have a chance to play in this series at all, but I mean, Giordano being able to fill in for that is just massive. Lyubushkin was a huge addition too. It's a question mark, I'll say right now still. I don't think they've proven that they're good enough yet, but I think they're in a better position than in previous years. But like Alex said, it's all going to be up to the team. I mean, it's not going to be because they're against the Lightning or the Bruins or whatever team they're against. It's going to be the team itself. It's going to have to step up. And guys like Auston Matthews, Mitch Marner, who haven't in the past, if they do, the Maple Leafs are the best chance of beating anyone at any given time because they're a talented enough bunch to do it. I mean, they were second in the league in scoring behind the Florida Panthers. Their goaltending can hold up. Jack Campbell was really good in the playoffs last year. It was because of the forwards that they just couldn't get it done. So I think in general, the team is better. They're always exciting to watch, even from an outside perspective. They're one of those teams I don't hate. I hate when they play the Canucks. It's not a team that's like when Calgary Flames were in the playoffs and they were in the Stanley Cup final against the Lightning way back, and everyone's pick the Canadian team to win. I said, I can't. I just can't. So the Leafs aren't that way for me, but I think they have a good chance this year. We'll see how they do. The Lightning is probably the best matchup for them because of how they play. They're not good, that shutdown type. So it'll be an exciting series regardless of the result of it.
Yeah, and you mentioned that run and gun offense that both teams like to play and even pressure, quickly transition into an offensive opportunity, even at the blue line or neutral zone, because both teams are extremely quick. And personally, I think that, if you're able to have a healthy Jake Muzzin, John Tavares, we all know what happened with him and his scary injury last year. The fact that he's back in the fold, the fact that he had a really strong season, despite some fans complaining about his production and the contract, here we go again kind of thing. But the fact that he's healthy, the fact that William Nylander has found more consistency to his game, the fact that Mitch Marner is now an offensive threat with his shooting instead of just passing all the time, this team can do some damage. And like you both said, it is up to them to try and figure out what they want to do, because the attitude and mentality is different this year. And speaking of that attitude and mentality, there was a few interesting comments. I'm going to start off with Auston Matthews first. This is by Larry Lage from the Associated Press. And Auston Matthews had a very interesting comment. He said, the scars that leaves behind is extra motivation, a little extra fire that burns within to go out there and make a difference and have a different outcome. Obviously, this is in part to the unsuccessful opportunities that they've had in the playoffs. He goes on to say, it's about doing, not talking about it. And I know this group feels ready. We have yet to hear, I mean, we've heard them say the same things over and over again. You know, we weren't at our best. We got to do better, so on and so forth. The same regurgitated answers. This is the type of answer where you hear someone who's a leader on the team, obviously because he rotates in as the alternate captain every now and then. That means business. And I think with the season that he had and a lot of record-breaking seasons, that, yeah, it was great, but they want to do more. Alex, do you get that same feeling that Auston Matthews' words is probably reassurance that we're going to see a different team and more consistency from them as a collective group?
Well, if nothing else, I should hope that's the sentiment that Auston Matthews is going with right now, because, you know, after losing in such embarrassing fashion to Montreal last year and having to sit through that entire summer of trade rumors and media scrutiny and, you know, just taking heat from all ends of the globe, regardless of whether you're talking about fans or media or whatever. If I'm obviously not a professional hockey player, but if I was, I can't imagine I'd want to sit through another summer like that. So I think that there's and you know what, people will say that this is a loser mentality or whatever, but I think that even winning a round this year will be progress. I personally think that if they win a round, they're going to go further than just 2 rounds. I think they're going to make a bit of a run, because I think it's just one of those things of getting the monkey off their back. But even if they were to go out in the second round, I think at the very least there, you've broken the first round curse, and that's something to build on in terms of next year. And you don't have to sit here and talk about trade rumors or whatnot, or what needs to happen, blowing up the core or whatever. So yeah, I do think that that's sort of the mentality that the Leafs are going with this year, because, you know, you hear it in the way that Matthews speaks, you hear it in the way that Jason Spezza speaks. I'll bring up his quote. He said, you know, father time doesn't last forever. And he's kind of on the last legs of his career, and he wants that Stanley Cup. So, and it also helps there's no Joe Thornton kind of barking in their ear saying, oh, relax, coach, we're in first place. So I think as long as they've all got that collective mentality of like, listen, this is 6 years in of doing this, we need to really put our best foot forward and get something done. And like he said, you know, do instead of say. So yeah, I that is definitely the feeling that I'm getting from the Leafs core. And now it's time to sit back and see if they can execute that in the playoffs.
Matt, do you agree that because of this mentality, because it's now the star player on the team, basically a face of the NHL, saying we expect more from ourselves, do you think that this is going to serve as some reassurance for fans that are probably going to say, well, here we go, another first round exit kind of thing? Do you think that it's going to be different this time around?
Well, I mean, it's a great quote. You know, it's very poetic quote from him. I mean, and the thing is, it's they do, that quote's going to go down in history as being, you know, something that it came true. So the thing is, he's a star player. We all know that. He's a headliner of the NHL. He's one of the faces of the NHL right now. First 60-goal season, massive for him. I think this is as good a time as any for him to step up in the playoffs and become that dominant force that he is always in the regular season. He definitely has the tools to do it. And he's the way he's talking, it does sound different to me from what he's said in the past. So if he steps up as that leader and, you know, pushes the offense like he always does in the regular season, the Leafs are going to be hard to beat. And it's not just him. If all the guys could do it, like Marner almost had 100 points this year as well. So if he steps up and if both of them start producing in the playoffs and do it in this first round, I think any team is going to be hard pressed to beat them. So yeah, I think it is going to be different this year. Like Alex said, if they get out of the first round, I think that's a big win, and it should push all those rumors and all that stuff. Even if they go out in that second round, I think it's a huge step forward. I mean, it'll be disappointment, obviously, but I think it'll be good for them, even if they do just get out of the first.
I'm a big proponent of using past failures as motivation for teams. I've even used that when I was coaching hockey. A few years we've been, bottom of the standings, and then 1 year we won a championship back to back. So I'm a big believer that if teams come together and channel that, past failures and use that as motivation. I think this time around, I've said it the last 3, 4, 5 seasons with the Maple Leafs, channel the failure of last season to this one. I think now you're at a boiling point. And with the image of Auston Matthews and Mitch Marner alone in the locker room in All or Nothing in Game 7, that alone speaks volumes. And I think that his comments right now back that up, that, you know, this is it. This is our moment. This is where we want to be as a team. And we got to exercise those playoff demons, so to speak, because they always manage to find great success in the regular season. It's the postseason where they seem to just light just shuts off kind of thing. So hopefully if they're able to do that, then I agree with Alex as well, that this could just be a more than just one round, we're done kind of thing. I think they want to go the distance. And speaking of another comment, this was from Lance Hornby in regards to Wayne Simmonds on the playoffs. Wayne said, you obviously have your offensive contributors, big boys, Matthews, Marner, Tavares, etc. And big game guys do what they do. But I'm a firm believer that a lot of series are won and lost by depth guys. This is an opportunity for depth guys to prove we're great players in this league as well. This season, the Maple Leafs depth from, middle six players like Ilya Mikheyev, Pierre Engvall, Ondrej Kase, David Kampf, Jason Spezza, and even Colin Blackwell, I'm going to throw him there. They have 6 players with double-digit goals, with Mikheyev leading the way with 21. Is the depth forwards going to be, something that's going to be on notice during the season? Matt, what do you make of that?
100%. The thing is about depth players, it's always the depth players that make a difference in the playoffs. I don't know how many times you can go back in time and say third lines won series, won Stanley Cups. Go back to Tampa Bay Lightning the last 2 years. The Anaheim Ducks with their Sammy Paulson line. That line was just, you looked at, Paul Kariya and Teemu Selanne. They're there, but who won it? I think that line won them the series and won them every series and won them the Stanley Cup. So I go back how many times the depth players are always the difference, because the stars get shut down. Every team, they go and say, well, we got to shut down Auston Matthews. We got to shut down Ovechkin, whatever. They go in there and try to lock it down. And then the depth guys are what makes the difference. So I think that's a big thing. It's always also missing from the Leafs' previous playoff runs. Their depth guys weren't getting it done either. So Simmonds' comments are completely correct. And the thing is, he's been in both situations. Mm-hmm. He's been a top line guy, and he's a depth guy. So he's been in both focuses. So I think they have the horses to do that and have the depth. Like Mikheyev, 21 goals. He plays on the third line probably mostly. And and Simmonds knows how to score. He's been in the playoffs before. I think their depth is going to be a huge difference in any series they play this year.
Alex, do you think the depth matches that or is greater than that of the Lightning?
I think it's really tough. I think both teams have. It's kind of hard to compare because Tampa Bay's made some great deadline acquisitions. Nick Paul's looked really good for them, and you can tell that he's going to be a great addition to their bottom six. You could say the same about Brandon Hagel. I know that Tampa Bay paid a really hefty price for him, and the production hasn't exactly matched the price in the regular season, but he's definitely the type of player that could come alive in the playoffs and make that third line one that's not fun to play against. But the good thing for the Leafs is that they've got the depth players as well. We're talking about, you guys mentioned Pierre Engvall and Ilya Mikheyev. Both of those guys have been instrumental for their depth this year. David Kampf, I wrote an article yesterday. I listed him as one of the X factors because all you have to do is take a look at the one guy on the Montreal Canadiens last year that was the kryptonite for Auston Matthews and Mitch Marner the entire series. Phillip Danault. Yeah. Phillip Danault had 1 goal and 4 points in total over 22 games in the playoffs last year. And yet, without his presence there, I think that the Leafs go to the Stanley Cup. I'm not going to lie, because he was out there against Auston Matthews and Mitch Marner every single time they were on the ice, and he didn't let them let alone didn't let them score. He didn't let them even get anything started. If you watched Game 7, they were skating around in circles with no plan in mind. So Yes, I think the depth is it's huge, and I think there is definitely some merit to what Wayne Simmonds is saying there, and that's a great point, Matt, about how he has been in both situations. He's played on that top line with Claude Giroux and Jacob Voracek before. He's also played in that third line, fourth line role. So, you talk about these veterans who have been here before and know what it takes to get it done. The Leafs definitely need they need their depth guys to step up, and I don't know if I would say their depth is better than Tampa Bay's, but I certainly think that they're on par with each other. So it'll be interesting to see how things go.
Both third lines are very speedy, and we see what we've seen with Mikheyev and Von Camp. Both fourth lines are matching up physically. We saw in that 8-1 thrashing how both Kyle Clifford and Wayne Simmonds weren't afraid to drop the gloves and throw punches if they need to, because that's the reason why they're in that situation, to get some energy going and let them know that, hey, we're not going down without a fight. So I think those two lines are going to be very instrumental for the Maple Leafs going forward. As both of you mentioned, obviously depth wins championships. And even when we saw with the Washington Capitals, how, they relied heavily on Ovi and Backstrom and Braden Holtby at times, but their depth came through at times where, you had Devontae Smith-Pelly, Lars Eller, all these names, even Tom Wilson at the time, even though he was probably in that top six, but produced like a bottom six player, he was instrumental. All of them played their factor. And, third line and fourth lines are going to be very instrumental from here on out and going to be a big difference maker. Jumping into our next topic, you always expect players to thrive and be main contributors, but there are also players that are also going to be very scrutinized and under the microscope this time around. Who is one player that's going to be under the most pressure this playoff series against the Tampa Bay Lightning? Matt?
Well, we mentioned his name already, Auston Matthews. I mean, I think he's going to be scrutinized the whole time because of what he did in the regular season. He hit that milestone 60 goals. He's now the leading single season goal scorer for a Maple Leaf that's been, in the history books for so long. And I want to throw Mitch Marner in there too. I mean, I think that duo is going to have a lot of pressure on them. They know it. They know that they have that pressure that they have to deliver in this series and in the playoffs. I mean, John Tavares, any of their top stars are all going to be scrutinized throughout this playoffs. And if game one, they don't play well, all that's going to come back. It's going to be, so they better hope they play well in that first game, or they're going to have a bunch of questions right off the bat.
Alex, do you agree?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I don't think Matthews is the only X factor, though. I think I actually wrote an article on this, and it just came out Sunday morning. So Auston Matthews, I think, is obviously a huge X factor. You can throw Mitch Marner in there as well. I said in the article that, Matthews and Marner, their regular season accomplishments are rightfully being celebrated. Matthews hitting 60 goals is just unheard of. It's insane. And, especially for Leaf fans, where for the longest time we were all excited over Phil Kessel scoring 35 goals in a season. Yeah. And now that's what Mitch Marner hit this year. So their celebrations, like they're rightfully being celebrated, but unfortunately that's going to be forgotten quickly if they don't win a round in the playoffs. So those two are definitely X factors. I also think Jack Campbell's a huge X factor because Campbell, obviously he had his struggles this year. January to March for him was a little bit of a tough time for him. It was a tough time for Leafs goaltending in general. And we saw firsthand what happens when the Leafs can't buy a save. And you don't want to have to go through that in the playoffs. If you look into recent years, all the goaltenders who have gone and not just even defeated the Leafs, but all the goaltenders who have gone on good runs have had a save percentage of at least like .920. So Andrei Vasilevskiy, we saw what he did. Carey Price, we saw what he did. Younes Korpisalo in the bubble against the Blue Jackets, we saw him stand on his head against the Leafs. The Leafs need Jack Campbell to be a good starting goalie this year. And I'm not worried about it as much as I may have been, say, 2 months ago, because he has looked a lot better since coming back from injury. And I think now at the very least, he's at a point where he can, the Leafs can trust him to make saves. But they're going to need that more than anything in the playoffs. And if he can replicate his performance from last year, I think he finished the series with a .934 save percentage or something. I think the only bad goal that he allowed was in game 7, but like I said earlier, that was the game that none of the team showed up. So I'm not putting too much blame on him for that. So I would like to see, I'd like to see Jack Campbell. I won't say stand on his head. I mean, that'd be nice if he wanted to do that, but I think at the very least, they just need him to show up and give him a chance to win. And I think that makes him a big X factor.
In his last 4 starts against the Islanders, Flyers, Panthers, and Red Wings, you could argue the competition maybe not have been that great, except for the Panthers, but Jack Campbell had a save percentage over 910 in his last 4 starts, and a 941 going back to that win or 6-2 win or 6-1 win over the Tampa Bay Lightning, where they were just absolutely dominated that game where Auston Matthews scored his hat trick. And I mean, I think you have to look at the whole roster under. I mean, Matt mentioned the stars. You mentioned Jack Campbell. I'm going to say the whole entire roster, forwards, defense, everything. Because if everyone's not coming together, if they're not clicking, then we've talked about this before. There are going to be major changes come next season, and we were already talking about major changes at the beginning of October and November when we were already seeing the team struggle and wondering if playoffs are going to be real or not. So here we are. We're in the playoffs now. This team, everyone has to come together for me. I think that's going to be the whole team is under pressure. I don't think necessarily you're going to throw Kyle Dubas or Sheldon Keefe to the curb because they're the ones that are building this. You can say that they're putting the team together with Dubas with the players, Keefe coaching. It's all on the players, and it always has been on the players to try and perform well. Now it's their time. They've shown that they can play well against top teams. We've heard about how times, they seem to push back against playing poor against lower seed teams, but then when the competition amps up, you see them play at their best. So hopefully that can continue. But then again, who knows? Anything can happen in the playoffs, but my bet is on that the whole team will be under the microscope this time around. To recap the show, once again, this episode is brought to you by the Hockey Writers Sports Betting Guide, the brand new source for daily sports betting odds, lines, props, futures, as well as fantasy strategies and analysis. Be sure to follow THW Bets on Twitter for everything sports betting related. And if you do decide to bet, please do so responsibly. And if you or anyone has a problem with gambling, please check out the resources that we have in the description below. To start off the second part of this show, we talked about X factors and those being under the microscope previously. Let's go with surprises. I mean, the Maple Leafs have a number of players that have stepped up and have improved throughout the season. Who are going to be your biggest surprises for this series against the Lightning? Alex, who do you think?
I'm going to throw a bold option out there, actually. I think one of the surprises is going to be Colin Blackwell.
Nice.
I think Colin Blackwell is going to be a very exciting player in these playoffs. I think he's been pretty quiet offensively since the Leafs traded for him. I think he's only got 2 goals, I think, since the trade deadline. So he's not coming in and producing at the rate that, say, a guy like Ilya Mikheyev is in the bottom 6. But you also got to factor in that he was playing on a very bad Seattle Kraken team, and he was getting top 6 minutes on that team, which was probably inflating his numbers just a little bit. And, obviously now you've got him playing on the 4th line, largely with guys like Spezza or Wayne Simmonds or guys like that, Kyle Clifford. So I think in the playoffs, he's going to be a guy that, because let's face it, stuff is going to happen. There might, whether it's an injury or, guys just not working well together. I'm sure there's going to be a point in the series where the Leafs are going to have to swap their lines around a little bit. And if that happens, I think Colin Blackwell will be a guy that gets the call to go up higher in the lineup and really get an opportunity to shine and show the rest of the team and show the fans what he can do. Because he's, just like when the Leafs traded for him, he self-described himself as an energy or a water bug. Was it a water bug or an energy bug? It was one of those two. I think it was an energy bug. So either way, he's got all sorts of energy with him. He's pretty good defensively as well. And I think he's a guy that you could put alongside a player like John Tavares. And, Tavares spent his entire career playing with guys who are, 40, 50 point guys. But not his entire career. His entire tenure with the Islanders. But either way, I think Colin Blackwell is a guy who could surprise. He's been kind of quiet, hasn't really gotten too much ice time yet. But I think if the Leafs find themselves in a position where they need to call somebody up higher in the lineup, I think Blackwell could be that guy, and I think he could surprise.
Matt, who do you have your eyes on?
Well, I'm going to stay with the bold thing, and I don't know if he'll play a lot, but I'm going to go with Nick Abruzzese. He scored his first NHL goal, I believe it was a couple games ago, and I think he's got that type of energy game that could, push in the playoffs and be really, really effective. Like I said, I don't know if he'll get a lot of ice time, if he'll be in the lineup all the time, but if he is, I think he'll make a difference. I think he'll be a surprise. I mean, like I say, in the playoffs, there's just so many. These guys come to play, and then they surprise as being, they're the guy that scores the game winner, or they score a key goal. And who was this guy? And during the regular season. So, and secondary is Mark Giordano. I think he's going to be a huge, like I said in the past, on the episode here, I think he's going to be a huge factor in any series here because of his veteran leadership, his ability to play a lot of minutes even at his age, and play a lot of roles with guys on the lineup. So those two are for me. More Giordano because I'm not sure about Abruzzese being a regular in the lineup, but I just want to say him, if it does happen, you can go back to this episode.
Both really great picks, to be honest. And again, depth is going to be key no matter what. And I'm going depth, but on defense. And I've been a big proponent of him from the start of the season, how he's been able to come into the lineup and play extremely well. Timothy Liljegren. You mentioned Mark Giordano, and the two have formed instant chemistry. And when I last looked at the numbers, the pairing as a whole for the Maple Leafs, they were tied for the best 5-on-5 goals for percentage. And they have the best high danger chances for percentage when they're on the ice. And they're a third pairing duo that see maybe not as many minutes as the top four, but, given how responsibly they have played, they could earn more ice time, especially in the playoffs. And looking at his numbers from February, March, and April, they're a big, sizable difference compared to where he was in the first few months. He had 5 assists in February, 8 points in March, including his second goal. He scored his first in January, and has 3 goals and 1 assist in the month of April. So if my math is correct, that comes out to 17 points, if I'm mistaken. Again, I was never good at math or accounting on the fly. But the fact that he was able to produce extremely well, the fact that he has 23 points right now, and I think the biggest sticking point right now is looking at his splits, 19 points in wins, 3 points in losses. So when they have the lead, when they have the momentum and they have everything going, he is on his best. And the fact that he has that two-way mentality, kind of plays the same style as Giordano, being physical, getting into lanes. Again, defensive game still under construction because he's still young, but the foundation is there. And I remember when people were writing him off right away because he was 22, still in the minors. He came over at 17 years old. This is what we've been waiting for. A young, strong, two-way right-handed defenseman. The Maple Leafs have that. And I think he's going to be very important because when the Maple Leafs have the lead, he's got the energy going. And I think that is going to go well for him as well as the team going forward. Going on to our final topic, we talked about Jack Campbell and even Andrei Vasilevskiy at the top of the show. This is going to be a big game. It's going to be a goaltending battle. And based on what I saw with Jack Campbell, he had 2 strong outings when he went up against Vasilevskiy. In November 4th, he made 24 saves and had a really great save percentage. And once again, he came out on top 6-2 in the win on April 4th, where he had a save percentage over .940 in both games. My question is, obviously, you can't be the next Andrei Vasilevskiy because Vasilevskiy is Vasilevskiy. He has the hardware. He has, the resume that goes with him as being one of the top goaltenders in this league. Can Jack Campbell, we've seen it in the regular season. I should have started off with that. Can Jack Campbell find a way to outduel Vasilevskiy and give his team the victory in the end? Alex?
I think, like I said early on, I think we've seen with Jack Campbell that when he gets hot, he can go on a run. And I think he's more than capable of doing that in the playoffs. But what I will say is that the Leafs can't put him in a position where they're relying on him to get them out of games if they want him to have that sort of performance. I think he's a guy that could have that kind of performance if thrown into that position, but that's not something you want to rely on. I think if the Leafs want to get the best version of Jack Campbell out as possible, then their forwards have to go out and do their jobs. The Leafs have branded themselves as an offensive team who like to score a lot of goals, so they need to do that. Go out there and put themselves in a position to win where, Campbell can get away with maybe letting in 1 or 2 bad goals. I think more than anything else, they can't put that kind of weight and pressure on his shoulders and say, hey, we need you to get us out of this series, because if that happens, then I think you're sort of signing up for a recipe of disaster. So yeah, overall, I think Campbell's more than capable of doing that. We've seen it in the past, even in the playoffs last year. He had the shutout in Game 4 against Montreal. His save percentage was .934 by the end. He is capable of playing well like this. The Leafs need to give him the best chance possible by doing that. And if they can do that, which I'm confident that they can, it's a matter of whether or not they decide to show up in the playoffs. But based on what we've talked about on this show already, the quotes coming out about how they're ready to stop saying and start doing, I think that it's possible. I think they can come out and play a strong series, and then we'll see the best version of Jack Campbell.
Matt, can Jack Campbell come out on top? And even though Vasilevskiy has looked fatigued at times, we should never count out one of the best goaltenders in this league. Again, we talked about his record last year and the way that he's kept his team in the game, even when they didn't play well. I'm just going to say the same thing. Is it possible? I mean, we've seen it happen before, but is it actually a possibility?
Well, I mean, I mentioned his playoff performance, and Alex did too last year, and he wasn't the issue. He wasn't the reason they were kicked out in the first round. He's proven he's a great goaltender. He went on a great run to start the season. Injuries kind of got in the way throughout, but I wish he would have played that way all year. He would have helped my fantasy team a little bit more, but he's a great goaltender, and he's fully capable of doing it. But like Alex said, you can't put him in a position where he has to make 40 plus saves a night. He has to bail you out, because I think in any case, that's not a good recipe. I don't care if it's Vasilevskiy, if it's Martin Brodeur. You don't put these goaltenders having to do that every night. It just doesn't work. But I think in this series in particular, this is going to be a great goaltending battle, because I think he can go elevate his play to Vasilevskiy's, and we all know Vasilevskiy's an elite goaltender. He's won 2 cups. He's also been a big factor in those cup wins. He wasn't just riding the coattails of guys. He was a reason for the win. So you don't discount him. He probably will have the same performance. So Campbell's going to have to elevate his play to that. If he can, it's going to be a hard fought. It's going to go to 7 games, and it's going to be back and forth. But it's going to be fun. I mean, this is just one of many matchups we're going to be watching here.
We have seen instances where, the favorite, kind of a David Goliath kind of thing. We have seen David come out on top and beat Goliath. Is this one of those instances? I mean, if anything, from what we've seen down the stretch with Campbell's playing, the fact that he's back, the way that to where he was when the season started, and he had that ridiculous stretch in October, November, I think, it is going to be a reason. If the Maple Leafs win a series or win the series, Jack Campbell is going to be one of the biggest talking points if and when that happens. So like we all said, especially at the top right now, and even Matt right now, it's going to be one hell of a series. It's going to be entertaining, and let's get it going. I'm really excited I mean, everyone is probably still thinking pain last year. You know what? I feel like this team is very different. So let the playoffs begin.
We'll see what we're talking about next week.
Yeah. We'll definitely have a lot more to talk about if anything good or bad happens. And even if there is something good, there's always going to be bad to talk about, no matter what. With this team. Well, that is it for this episode of Maple Leafs Lounge. Once again, if you haven't heard me say it the first 2 times, check out the THW Sports Betting Guide, a brand new source for daily sports betting odds, lines, props, futures. You name it, everything is there. And be sure to follow THW Bets on Twitter for the latest sports betting news. Also, please bet responsibly. And if you or anyone has a problem with gambling, be sure to check out the resources that we do have in the description below. That's it for this episode of the Maple Leafs Lounge. For Alex Hobson and Matthew Zator, I am Peter Baracchini, and we'll see you next time.